All right, you're recording.
All right, so we chose to do our presentation on the Tomorrow Will Be Different, and we chose the topic, Why is intersectionality so misunderstood?
So, a summary of Tomorrow Will Be Different. It's about Sarah McBride's transition to becoming a woman, as well as her journey into politics and desire to improve transgender rights. And it also discusses the issues that transgender people have to face. So, the issue we decided to discuss is the misunderstanding of intersectionality. Sarah McBride brings it up in the book a couple of times and discusses her own experiences involving it. And so we thought it would be cool to kind of discuss it since it's not really a wide known word. And so my own experience with this, I think one of my biggest things is probably me being a woman. And I'm still discovering my own journey through the queer community, I guess. And so I know there's been assumptions on my sexuality, and there's been, things I have to face because I'm a woman. And so I think that's kind of some of my own experiences with it.
And I personally, I don't think that intersectionality has affected myself or my family in any way that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had any experiences with it either.
Okay, the first solution is teaching students about what intersectionality is. So teaching students about intersectionality and the importance of it would allow for a greater number of people to be well educated on the topic. It would also limit the misunderstandings on the topic, as well as help create more rounded individuals. I also feel like a lot of the misunderstandings come from people thinking that intersectionality can only affect the LGBTQ community when it can affect anyone of any race or gender. And also, people think that intersectionality is just being discriminated or something by like one thing when people can be discriminated by many different things. And then a quote that I found from one of the sources is there's no such thing as a single issue struggle because we do not live single issue lives.
So the second solution is that places of work should require to educate employees on intersectionality. Before I go into that, I wanted to use a definition of what it is, kind of help. So this this resource I found was from the intersectionality packback we had to do. It's one I found, but it's basically saying that intersectionality is an overlap between groups that are judged and not treated fairly based on, gender, race, sexuality. And in the image on the left, you can kind of see what that means, how it's not being, people are not being mistreated just for one thing, how it can be multiple things. And then with this solution, I think if employees are educated on what intersectionality is, they would be more informed on it and hopefully more able to help their fellow colleagues. And I did some research on this, and I found that a lot of the hope is that with more understanding of the fellow colleagues, that the place will be a more non-discriminatory place. So
The third solution we came up with was more talk of intersectionality in the media. I mean, I personally haven't heard of the word before this class, so I mean, more talk of it in the media would be good. More articles about it. The only articles I've ever seen are the ones that I specifically looked up the word intersectionality. And this can also be done through TV shows and movies because, I mean, that's the best way to reach the mass population.
in my
What's the best?
opinion,
Oh, you got
I
it.
was just going to go with Sorry.
You're-
I was just gonna, for my opinion, I think the third option would be the best, where media would help. Just because I think that right now would be the more outreach, because it's not just affecting students, not just workers, media can reach out to more people.
Yeah, I think kind of all three of them fall under the umbrella of education. And I think, yeah, the third option is the best way to reach the most people.
I agree, but I was personally gonna say the teaching it in schools, because I feel like if you're taught it in schools, you're more likely to learn more in depth about the topic rather than just seeing it like throughout the media and learning like a little bit about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and our final thoughts were just that, the novel was written by someone that brings a lot of attention to the issue and, she speaks about it outside of the book. So, yeah, it was just good to get her perspective on it.
Oh, oops. I actually am right. I'm totally writing down because I loved that quote from that what is intersectionality slide, that first one, the each person or the there's no such thing as a single issue struggle. I liked that. So I'm totally
Mhm.
looking up that article to read later. But yeah, no, so this is good. No, this is good. So the only thing we're really missing is just like the deliberation part of it, right? And so it's
Mhm.
having a conversation about each solution. So this is good. Coming back to the slides. Now let's talk like about the different solutions together. And so here we have like teaching students about what intersectionality is. Samantha or Ethan, would you like to add anything since Taylor, you kind of led the charge on this one?
Yeah, I think it's also good to sort of teach, the younger generation, because they're our future. And so I think that teaching it in school would be beneficial to sort of put that out there, which I feel like could also benefit some of the other solutions we came up with. Because again, students are our future.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, going more in depth about it, yeah, it would be good because if it is just in the media, people won't fully understand what it is unless someone tells them more in depth about it.
I also wanted to I
Oh,
wanted to add, because those are obviously like a lot of pros about teaching it, and I wanted to add that like some of the cons could be like if like parents don't agree with their children learning about that in school, that could cause issues between the parents and the school systems, as well as if teachers don't feel comfortable teaching it, that could cause more issues there. So I would say those are some of the cons of that. But
that's a good way to think about it because there's always pros and cons to everything, right? And so it's just making sure you're informed and that you make the most well-informed decision based on what makes sense, what's doable. We call it SMART. It's an acronym, but there's a lot of different things like, are your goals achievable, right? And how do you get there? And so you got a lot of pushback from politicians, you got a lot of pushback from parent groups. And you've seen that in your packbacks. You've seen this in the books. The Deviance War, for example, went all about laws here and there, going all over the place. But yeah, it very much comes down to. It's always going to come down to education, but it's the access to the information that becomes the issue. So, yeah.
Mm.
All right. So now we're talking places of work. Taylor, Ethan, do you want to jump in since Samantha, you took lead on this one?
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, I've worked at a few places and I mean, I've never like experienced anyone mentioning this. So, I mean, maybe the mention of it would be good, like kind of an onboarding process.
yeah, I definitely think it's important for like your place of work to be educated on this topic. But again, falling back on like the cons, they could not want to learn about it or something like that. And cause issues with them working at that specific workplace.
I think it depends a lot on what the workplace is, right? So in academia, very much we're at a public university. We're in Virginia. Right now we have laws that we're okay, but there's bills being passed, bills being introduced all the time, right, about education, even in Virginia. But it's we're always talking about it, right? Well, let me not always is a maybe not the correct word. We're more likely to care about the discussions as professors at a public university, where laws aren't saying we can't teach these things. But let's say you were at a private university in Florida. They're probably not having these conversations as much as we are, like at Longwood, for example. And keep in mind, we're a predominantly white institution. So we don't have the best accessibility. We don't have the best diversity, but we're talking about it. Whereas someplace like Wall Street, are they really talking about it? So it depends on where you're working too.
Yeah.
I think it starts to become an issue when it gets into the prejudices and the direct and blatant and even kind of microaggressions to a degree, like when it starts to affect your job, that's when it becomes issues.
Yeah. I feel like for the media, talking about the media, I mean, it could be on any movie or TV show that you're watching, and you might not even realize that it's being talked about. And people of all ages could watch it and learn about it just based off what they're watching on the media.
Yeah, I think that, again, what I said earlier, that this might have more outreach, but some cons are a lot of people might just skip past it. Not because of what it represents, but a lot of people might see big words and just, skip by it.
Yep.
Because a lot of people look for media for the mindless time passing stuff. And so sometimes talking about these big issues can not really get passed in the media.
Yeah, one of the cons that I listed when we were doing this was like negativity that it could bring. Like when you bring things up in the media, obviously there's going to be some people that don't agree with what you're saying, so it could bring a little bit more negativity to the topic.
Yeah, and keep in mind, you've got algorithms now that determine what's even pushed out into your feeds, like your news stories, the videos you watch on YouTube, the things that pop up on your Netflix recommendations. It is very highly, it's you're gonna vacuum a little bit, right? In the sense of it's gonna send you things that they think you're gonna be interested in reading. And so the most likely people to read things about intersectionality are gonna be people who read more left-leaning news are going to be people who look at more documentary type things, people who are probably looking at things already related to intersectionality, even if they don't know the word. Because you're right, big words are scary. Big words are scary. Echo chamber is what we call that, by the way. You're just constantly feeding into the things you already kind of believe and think, so you're not getting a full wide perspective. Or education, I should say, even with the media exposure. So yeah. Well, any last thoughts here? No, not really.
think so.
Yeah. All right. Well, good job. I'm going to stop recording.